Welcome back everyone guys, today I'm here with another great video on new upcoming game from Obsidian Entertainment, Avowed, including every info unveiled so far. Let's get going. Avowed is new adventure coming to us from developer Obsidian Entertainment that takes place in the same universe as Pillars of Eternity. The first-person RPG is said to feature real-time combat, a sprawling world to explore, and magic. Since its initial reveal during the E3's Xbox and Bethesda showcase back in 2021, news have been pretty quiet on the news front when it comes to Avowed. But as one of the upcoming Obsidian games currently in development, excitement surrounding the project continues to grow. Just from the announcement trailer alone, we're excited to see and learn more of this new adventure and what it holds in store for us. Since its 2020 reveal, Avowed has quietly held a top slot on the eagerly awaited lists of first-person fantasy fans. In a world where we probably can't expect Elder Scrolls 6 for the better part of a decade, at least, Obsidian's Skyrim-like spin-off from the Pillars of Eternity universe sounds like just the thing to keep our open-world wanderlust sated. Sometimes you just need to wander through caves with a sword in one hand, a spell in the other, and probably a skeleton somewhere in front of you with a convenient journal entry nearby. Tragically, that eager anticipation hasn't translated into much information, because we haven't heard a peep about Avowed since its first showing. That said, with Grounded out, and Pentiment at least, Obsidian's slate looks pretty open. And we've still got no info at the Game Awards this year. Cross those fingers and hope Keithley's got some Avowed available to unveil. Avowed is a new IP from Obsidian, revealed during the July 2021 Xbox Games Showcase. It appears to be a first-person RPG similar to Skyrim, with rune-based magic powers and sword combat, confirmed by the short teaser trailer. It's set in the land of Eora, the same setting Obsidian used for its RPG Pillars of Eternity. Job listings found in September of 2019 for Obsidian's next AAA project talked about combat actions, utilizing both first and third-person animations, with branching dialogue and day and night cycles. This puts the game in league with Obsidian's former RPGs, such as The Outer Worlds and Knights of the Old Republic to the Sith Lords. Avowed doesn't yet have a release date. However, multiple reports have said that the game is coming along well and progressing quickly, which has led to speculation that the game could release in the second half of 2023. This is speculation as Microsoft has not confirmed an official release date for the game, so we will have to wait until we get an official word to get a proper idea. Avowed doesn't have any indicated release date yet. The reveal trailer didn't hint at any window or even suggest a possible year, but given that Obsidian has recently launched the 1.0 version of Grounded, its early access survival game, and with Pentiments released in November, maybe it will be time to talk about Avowed soon. Granted, Obsidian has also now committed to a sequel to their space-y RPG The Outer Worlds 2, and we don't know which is coming first. We do however know that the first-person RPG is set to arrive on Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Xbox Game Pass when it does launch. It's unclear when Avowed is going to be officially released, but given that we've seen no gameplay and very little cinematic work, it's more than likely years away. That reality is even more evident when you realize that Obsidian is currently working hard on Grounded as well as The Outer Worlds 2. We do know that it's coming to the Xbox Series X and Windows 10, so if it's skipping over the Xbox One, then it's outside of the 2-year cross-gen window. The earliest we might see this game is late 2023, but more likely to launch in 2024 to 2025. Right now, all we can really confirm is that Avowed will be a first-person RPG. But rumors have long persisted that the game will mirror elements of Skyrim and other Elder Scrolls RPGs. Back in 2019, Obsidian posted several job listings that might give an indication of what Avowed will play like. Based on its reveal trailer and some prior job postings, we've suspected that Avowed will be a first-person melee and magic-style game, similar to the Elder Scrolls. A report from October 2021 gets into some early details on combat that suggest the same. According to Windows Central, Avowed will have action-oriented first-person combat, in which you can dual-wield different weapons. You might use 2 daggers for a rogue-style character, a bow, a combination of weapons and magic, or just dual-wield some powerful spells. Weapon enchantments such as magical swords or frozen arrows are mentioned as well. One of the details we do know about Avowed is that it's set in the fantasy world of Eora, which is the world upon which Pillars of Eternity is set. Pillars of Eternity is another RPG franchise from Obsidian, though it is a more traditional isometric party-based game, billed as a spiritual successor to titles like Baldur's Gate and the Planescape series. Pillars of Eternity received a sequel in Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire in 2018, which further developed the lore of Eora. It wouldn't be a bad idea to check the franchise out if you're excited about Avowed, so you can ground yourself in the lore of this fantasy world. Sleuths on Reddit have found some small tidbits that give us a better idea of the premise behind Avowed. According to this post, the flag scene in the Avowed trailer is related to Wodika, a deity also known as Oathbender who shaped Eora, but was killed by the other gods who conspired against her for being too powerful. Wodika is one of the faiths held by the Eater Empire, a nation within the world of Eora. That may be where the game takes place. The story of Wodika lines up with the narrative of the trailer, where the protagonist is confronting a destiny of broken oaths, a fallen empire, and potential royalty. Interestingly enough, the translated Eaterin runes on the sword seen in the trailer spit out Oathbender, according to a Reddit post. The fact that the combat is sword and magic based suggests it may be a medieval prequel to Pillars of Eternity, which includes more Renaissance modes of combat, such as flintlock pistols and crossbows. It does certainly sound familiar for Skyrim fans. Listen, with the dearth of any official material, we've got to share what scraps we can get. Back in October, this screenshot materialized on Twitter, originally shared on an unspecified Discord server, and supposedly from an early playable build of Avowed, that's now a year or more out of date. Not much to go off of, given that it's a screenshot of some non-specific woodland and a distant ruin and that it might not even be legitimate. But if nothing else, we have reason to hope that the spellcasting in Avowed will feature some impressive finger-based tricks. Though much of Avowed is still a mystery, some self-proclaimed Microsoft insiders have come forward to share details about Avowed's development. The biggest of these leakers is Sponger, a member of gaming forum Resorterra, who dumped a long list of rumored gameplay features Obsidian is looking to implement in Avowed. The authenticity of Sponger's leaks was backed up by another notable Microsoft leaker named Clabril, who had also leaked some key details about Microsoft's other big games at the time. Aside from being set somewhere in Eora, it's not clear what connection Avowed might have to the characters and events of Pillars of Eternity or its sequel. It's very possible that Avowed is set on a different continent or in a different period of time, and that the games only share minor lore references. Over on the Pillars of Eternity subreddit, however, players have noted some interesting connections. The castle shown in the opening shot flies banners that resemble the symbol for Wodika, the god of justice and law who also goes by the name Oathbender. That's the same name as the sword shown in the trailer, and those runes etched on it are Eaterin, the language of one of Eora's biggest empires, where Wodika was primarily worshipped. Wodika serves as a kind of indirect antagonist to the player in both Pillars of Eternity and its sequel, a god who is looking to restore her influence and power to assert dominion over all of creation. Given that information, one of the bigger rumors is that Avowed is a prequel to Pillars of Eternity and set in the Eater Empire. And when you consider the banners shown in the trailer and the Oathbender sword carved with Eaterin runes, it makes a lot of sense. By the time Pillars of Eternity starts, Wodika was exiled. Avowed could explore her fall from power, which might also explain the trailer's ominous monologue about Forsaken Oaths. Avowed will be fully open world and much larger than Skyrim, but not necessarily in total size. The world will be denser and more contrasted, which presumably means diverse. The main setting will be the Living Lands region of Eora, which is a northern frontier not seen directly in either Pillars of Eternity game. There will be a big focus on world reactivity, lighting, and next-gen AI systems. There will be a real-time weather system. Character creation is supposed to be very advanced and detailed. Mod support is planned. The world will have lots of factions, but they won't be similar to Skyrim's factions. You will be able to enlist the help of companions, but it is supposedly very different to how it works in Obsidian's other recent RPG, The Outer Worlds. The game will feature boss battles that happen on a very large scale. 2 large cities are being planned, with smaller settlements dotting the map and large areas of wilderness. Creatures and wildlife will be based on Pillars of Eternity lore, but will make new additions. Dynamic presentation of dialogue, whatever that might mean. Obsidian wants to make it possible to kill anyone in the game, similar to how Morrowind let players terminate the main plot by killing certain key characters. Around 100 people are working on the game currently, and it's been in development for 2 years, with 7 months of pre-production. The target release window is late 2022 or early 2023. While details from Obsidian and Microsoft on Avowed have been scarce, there has been one interesting leak that gained some traction on Resetera back in 2020. User Sponger posted a number of bold claims about Avowed that we're going to sum up. Just make sure you take this with a heavy pinch of salt, as without corroboration these claims are unsubstantiated. According to Sponger, the game will be fully open world and much larger than Skyrim. The leaker says the game will be set in the Living Lands of Eora and feature a real-time weather system, as well as mod support. Players will apparently be able to have companions, fight very large bosses, and deal with gods, while fighting against the incoming threat of tyranny. which frames the narrative. The dialogue will also supposedly be dynamic, and the leaker claims Obsidian is planning to allow players the ability to kill everyone in the game. Sponger claims that as of July 2020, the game had been in development for 2 years and 7 months, with around 100 people working on it with scope to grow. The final claim is that the developers are targeting late 2022 early 2023 as a potential release window for the game. Again, none of this should be taken at face value. We can't confirm or deny these leaks, and even now in late 2022, Obsidian has not revealed enough about Avowed to corroborate any of these claims.